Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to talk to you about toxic emotions today. Honestly, I am really excited to talk to you today. This is something that I have been really sort of kind of obsessed with lately because of my personal experiences with emotions and learning the connection between your mind and your body and freedom, really. So what I would ask is, do you kind of feel sometimes like you have no control over your emotions? And do you feel like you don't even know where they're coming from, that they're just there and they're just so strong? Or maybe you have an emotion about an emotion, like you're afraid of fear. With me, that was one thing that I was very afraid to be afraid. You may really want to listen to this and learn this technique of how to detox from some of your toxic emotions. So ever since I've been learning more about the mind-body connection and how this all works, I've been working with a few individuals here lately, and we've been using this technique among other things and having a lot of success with it. So I feel like I need to share it because more and more people need to know about how this works and how to use this. Really, all I'm doing right now is describing a technique that I've been using, and I'm not going to take credit for the technique either, because although I've adapted a little bit and I've had quite a bit of research, looked at a few different sources, this technique is mainly based on a system by Deepak Chopra. He's a practicing physician. He's actually a leader in alternative medicine too. He speaks, he's written books, and I'm not intimately familiar with all his writings and teachings, but this technique for sure is one I've latched onto and only very slightly adapted. So I want to give credit where credit is due. A quick word on emotions and why this is so vital that we do this work. Like I said before, so many times we look at emotions as like running our lives, or they're just completely out of our control, or we have no idea where they've even come from. Well, the more that researchers look at this, the experts, and they're all agreeing that our emotions come from thoughts. And, the longer that you hold a thought, you really start to see emotions and feelings in the body, which then cause physical manifestations. So the negative thought patterns that perceive these negative emotions like fear, anger, sadness, hostility, they're usually based on unmet needs of childhood. So when we're little, we need things. We need attention. We need affection. We need to be able to create ourselves, to express creativity. We need acceptance. We need self-esteem and security. And when these things are not met, we develop thoughts and emotions around that. There's two main categories. Fear is one, and then anger. So fear is when we're anticipating some type of pain in the future, and anger is usually we are remembering some type of pain in the past. And then there's all kinds of other emotions in between there. Guilt and shame is when we direct pain towards ourselves. When people are depressed, this is when you're depleted of energy because of these chronic and toxic emotions building up. So one thing that was huge to me was when I noticed and realized that fear and anger completely take us out of the now, take us out of the present moment and the here and now. Because if we're remembering something in the past and we're angry about it, or if we're looking at something in the future to be afraid of, we are not here. We're back there, or we're head over there. That's exciting to me because it shows me that I do have control, and that control comes with awareness. So what happens is the emotions build up in our body, and they give rise to inflammation. I know a lot of you have heard me talk about inflammation because I talk about it a lot, because it is the common factor in chronic disease. If you're talking about heart disease, autoimmune disease, chronic pain, premature aging, basically any chronic illness is going to be connected to low-grade inflammation. So if we know that these chronic emotions, toxic emotions, are terrible for us, basically, and they're causing and wreaking havoc on our bodies. We need to flush them out, and we need to keep them from building up in the future. And is there a way to do this? Well, this is the technique that I've been using, and I want to share it with you. There's 7 steps to it. The first step is to take responsibility. The second step is to feel the emotion, huge, because for me in the past, I would be afraid of feeling the emotion, and so I would stuff the emotion or try to avoid the emotion by reaching for something that would blunt the emotion. That's 2. 3 is to label the emotion. 4 is to describe the emotion. 5 is to share the emotion. 6 is to release it. And 7 is to move on. So I'm going to briefly describe these. The first one was responsibility. This means you don't get to blame anybody else. If you are blaming someone else for the way you feel, that's giving that person the power, and it's keeping you weak and vulnerable. So if you really think about it, as long as you're blaming somebody else or something else, you can't be free, because now everything's hinging on this other person doing or saying something to make you feel better. So you don't be a victim. These are your emotions, aren't they? So only you can do something about them, which is empowering. So take responsibility. The second, feel the emotion. This, again, was huge for me because I was avoiding feeling the emotion. And when I realized that is exactly why I was stuck, was because these emotions kept building up higher and higher to toxic levels within me. And no wonder I had all these issues. So to feel the emotion, what you want to do is remember or recall the painful experience, if you can. If you don't, like for me, I did not have a specific painful experience that I could remember and say, this is when this started. But I could notice and feel the tension in my body. Emotions are always associated with sensations in your body. So be aware of what those sensations are. For me, I had a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, and that would manifest in my chest, in my throat, and in my head. A lot of times discomfort's going to be in your stomach, in your heart or chest, your throat, your neck, your shoulders, and your head. So again, try and remember or contemplate this painful experience, and then notice where you feel that in your body, or just be aware instead of thinking, oh, my head hurts or my shoulders hurt. Notice this what you're feeling as you're feeling that sensation. And for me, it was pretty easy to notice that when I felt that way, I was afraid or I was anxious. Okay. Number 3 is to label. This is not assigning blame. Again, this is labeling just a general name for your feeling. For me, I would say I was afraid. I was anxious. You might say I was angry, sad, whatever general name you can assign to that feeling. Go ahead and do that. Quite simple. Number 4 is to describe or express. This was so liberating for me. This helps you take a different perspective. So what Deepak Chopra asked was to describe it in the first, second, and third person. So write this down. And again, this is so powerful when you take the first person and say, I was afraid. That's one perspective. When you take the second person and someone else is in that situation and they say, you were afraid, immediately you're just distanced from it. If maybe the first person knows, I was afraid because my mom left. The second person could be your mom's perspective. I had to leave you because this or this was going on. And the third person would be like a reporter taking notes on what was going on or writing a story completely objectively. It's really, really powerful when you do this. You can feel the energy of the emotion drain. You can just feel your perspective shifting. Your inflammation is going down and your immunity is coming up. So the 5th step is sharing. You want to tell the story to someone that you trust without being a victim now. You don't want to. You've probably told the story before or talked about the emotion in the past, but maybe with yourself as a victim. This time you want to tell the story the way you wrote it down in that first, second, or third person, and all three without being the victim. And then number 6 is to release it. Now that you've been able to express this, shift your perspective and look at it in a different way, take responsibility for that. You're ready to let it go. So you want to do this symbolically and actually perform some type of action, whether it's burning the piece of paper that you wrote it down on, floating it out to sea, throwing it away, burying it. Do something so that your mind is going to connect this is, you're letting this go. We're not keeping this. We're not holding on to this in a notebook or in a journal. And that's really it. The seventh step is to move on. The Deepak talks about rewarding yourself or celebrating, giving yourself some type of a reward, just recognizing that you've accomplished something here. And that is important too. That's pretty much it. I wanted to share this again because it's been life-changing for me. What has happened for me is after I started doing this, the more I did it, over maybe a period of a week, this has happened in such an accelerated way in my life. Now, when I start to feel an emotion or feel tension, it's so rapid that I'm able to go through these steps. I don't even need the sharing step. I don't need to reward myself at the end. I'm able to basically take responsibility right away. What am I feeling? Feel it briefly, label it, describe it to myself, step away and let it go. And it is so freeing. This is what we want to do. We want to be free of these toxic emotions. You start to be more centered in the flow without all that resistance that comes from being trapped, having all this trapped emotion. So certainly, if you are dealing with severe, clinical depression and have been struggling with this, and this type of cognitive exercise does nothing for you, please continue to seek all the help that you've been previously engaging in. And in any case, continue to do that. But I wanted to let you know about this tool that's been working for me, and I really hope that it helps you guys to take care.